video, I'm going to try and answer 3 questions. How do symbiotic relationships transfer energy from one trophic level to the next? Why is it important? How is the process affected by persistent organic compounds? Now that's a tongue twister. Let's start with a couple of definitions so that I know you are clear when I start to explain. First off, a trophic level is each of several hierarchical levels in an ecosystem, comprising organisms that share the same function in the food chain and the same nutritional relationship to the primary source of energy. In English, please, Jones. It means the levels in an ecosystem where organisms are feeding on the same stuff. Primary producers are responsible for taking the energy available in abiotic elements of the ecosystem and converting them into food for other biotic organisms. These are organisms that perform photosynthesis. Moxie Fruvis can explain this for you.
The sun sends rays traveling through outer space, photons of light that feed the human race. This solar thrill that turns on chlorophyll, the nourishing kiss of photosynthesis. To create this ecstasy, plants use this recipe. Add water to light, an electron takes flight, and oxygen is set free. The result is ATP. That's how plants store energy. Real cooking begins when CO2 comes in. It's a sugar factory. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-da. Plants and trees are the base of a hierarchy. The rest of us too live off this chemistry. Yes, even beef starts off from a leaf. Life's secret is this: photosynthesis. Photosynthesis helps to clear carbon from the atmosphere. It takes CO2 in, releases oxygen. Photosynthesis helps to clear carbon from the atmosphere. It takes CO2 in, releases oxygen. Ba-da-ba.
The organisms that fall into higher trophic levels all gain their energy from the trophic level below. So, how does this energy move through the trophic levels? It looks something like this. The sun is our 100% energy source. That is harnessed by the primary producers to the tune of 10%. That's right, only 10% of the available energy from the sun is converted into food or sugar. A 90% loss. You can imagine that the pyramid to sustain an ecosystem needs to have a pretty big base. If we only get 10% of that energy. If we stack up all the primary producers in an ecosystem, you would have the biomass, or living weight, of the primary producers. The sun can sustain a lot of primary producers if the abiotic conditions are right for growth. Primary consumers are the next trophic level up. They receive only 10% of that 10% that came from the sun. If we stacked all of them up, we would get their biomass. And because there's significantly less energy available to them, there are fewer of them in an ecosystem. If we move up another trophic level to the secondary consumers, they receive 10% of that 1% from the primary consumers. That's even less energy available to them, so their biomass and resulting chunk of the pyramid is even smaller. I bet you can guess what happens if you move to the tertiary level. That's right, 10% of that 0.1% of energy. Ecosystems can support much fewer tertiary organisms, and there is so little of the sun's energy available to them that they must consume so many more organisms in the lower levels just to survive. Their biomass and chunk of the trophic pyramid, as a result, is the smallest. So the transfer of energy through the ecosystem is important because it dictates the number of organisms in each trophic level that can be sustained without interference, which helps to naturally regulate symbiotic relationships like predator-prey, mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. Nature has cyclical balance totally figured out. Let's be honest, nature does not operate in a bubble. Unless you're talking about Biosphere 2. Check it out, it's kind of an interesting idea. Nature is dramatically affected by human activity. So let's see how some persistent organic pollutants are affecting the natural pyramid of trophic levels. A POP is a compound that stays in the environment once it's put there, usually by humans. An example of this would be PCBs. Before PCBs were banned because of their huge effect on the ozone layer, they were present in many aerosol products found on the Earth. These PCBs persist to this day and can be found in many aquatic animals in high quantities. We measure the concentration of these POPs in parts per million. PCBs settled into the oceans and became part of the food web there. If we look at a single food chain, we can see how they have seriously impacted the organism. Let's start with phytoplankton. They accumulate PCBs in this process of photosynthesis. The parts per million is really low, and the PCB isn't really harmful to them or to the level above them. This is bioaccumulation of a POP. The zooplankton that eat the phytoplankton have a higher concentration as they eat so many infected phytoplankton. If we look even further up the chain, at the small fish that eat infected zooplankton, the concentration there is even higher. As we continue to move up the chain of concentration of PCBs getting higher and higher, till we finally meet the apex predator, like an orca, the concentration in that individual can be so high it affects their life cycle dramatically, making them sick, toxic to their young, or infertile altogether. The magnification of the problem is called biomagnification. These kinds of issues can lead to ecosystem sickness, as it can reduce the natural cycle of life and death. The circle of life is affected.